to start such a reaction, and his only interest really in the atomic project was to use the fission bomb as a kind of match to start this burning reaction. Now, there were many other interesting people. One whose voice boomed out over everything was Emilio Segre, who had been a collaborator with Fermi in Italy, and who made an important discovery or two, which I may get to talk about yet. But let me also mention one of the most engaging people in the place. That was Richard Feynman. Feynman was in theory division. There he is in a more pensive pose. Feynman was an extraordinarily gifted mathematician already in college. He won a national competition, an examination really. As a student at MIT, he had just finished as a graduate student at Princeton. And he was, his father, let me say, was a salesman, a uniform salesman. He was an entertaining speaker. And we have never had an entertainer quite like Feynman. I don't know whether you run into Feynman's various things. He was a fantastic storyteller, and many of his stories have been put together by a young fellow, Ralph Layton, and they were published under the name of Feynman and Layton. One of the understandings at Los Alamos was that while security would be very tight regarding information leaving Los Alamos, there had to be very free exchange among the appropriately cleared people, the so-called white badge workers, within Los Alamos. And so there was a colloquium held in the evening, once a week, in which we all sat in a tightly guarded gymnasium on canvas chairs. There is an example. Feynman, in fact, is in this. If I can find him, well, from this angle, I will not. Background, there is Oppenheimer, John Madden. This is Fermi. We sat in canvas chairs and then spread out over the gymnasium and listened to all sorts of things from every branch of the project because it was felt so necessary, at least by the scientists, to collect ideas from everyone. And many of the ideas that were collected and experimented with, tried out, were absolutely outlandish, unlike things you've ever heard of in all your life. It was necessary. The General Groves, had the thought of putting everybody in the project in uniform and not revealing anything to anyone that wasn't immediately necessary for him to carry out his job. That would have closed off the exchange of ideas completely, and the scientists were not having that. That goes back to early 1943. Those matters had been settled completely, or at least mostly, by the time I arrived. So that's the colloquium. Here is one of the figures. That's his badge photograph. One of the figures at Los Alamos. And here, I will hear a bit more about him shortly. Here he is with Feynman and von Neumann discussing something. Now, I have to tell you, there are very few pictures that emerged from Los Alamos, because although we all brought cameras there, the first thing the security people did was to tell us that they would arrest us if they saw us with these cameras within the precincts of Los Alamos itself. So we put all our cameras in safe deposit. Now, this chap at the left end of the sofa is Stanislaus Ulam. You saw his picture and his badge a moment ago. Ulam was a pure mathematician, and this is one of the great transformations that took place at Los Alamos. Ulam started out worried about such pure mathematical problems. I don't know whether any of you would know what is ergodic theory. It has to do with dotting the I's and crossing the T's in a particular and very complicated mathematical theory, which was very obscure at the time, and I would have to say it fascinated mathematicians but had absolutely no relevance. That attitude of Ulam changed with time, as you'll see. Here is another person who showed up from time to time. They would announce the arrival of Nicholas Baker, and people would crowd to the room in which the meeting was taking place, and others who were not cleared would wonder, what in hell is going on? They've never heard of Nicholas Baker. Well, Nicholas Baker was, of course, Niels Bohr. And let me just say a word about security. In general, security, what they could do in practical terms is avoid the use of particular words and particular names that might be overheard by people who were outside the pale, by truck drivers, taxi drivers, domestic people, and the like. So security did at least accomplish that we were very careful about using names which were clearly identifiable, and we were confident that Nicholas Baker would not scare anybody, but it did arouse the curiosity of a great many people. Bohr was always accompanied in those days by his son. This is a picture taken earlier in Copenhagen. His son, Oa. I don't know what name Oa, its first name is A-A-G-E. That name alone might have raised some eyebrows. And I don't know what his assumed name was. I simply don't remember. This is a picture, of course, of father and son taken a bit earlier, still in Denmark.